Hi guys, welcome to part 3. It's going to be an interesting one, especially working on the drum brake as well as servicing this unique headset, so please stay tuned. The first few minutes of the video is me servicing the headset. So there's a dust cap, and once you remove that, there is a nut, and then you remove it. There are two 5mm bolts that actually hold this entire stem slash handlebar, the single unique component, in its place. Once it's done, the whole thing just pops off. I didn't want to remove the entire brake cables, so I used zip ties to hold that in place. Now I'm removing the final components, and then the race comes out, which is also a nut. Okay, this is out, and it's actually not bad, as you can see in the video. It just needs a good cleaning. Same thing with the bearings. Now I'm removing the the fork, and then this one, there's some dried up grease that needs a good cleaning, but otherwise it's okay. I'm using a 240 grit sand block to really remove those dried up grease spots. Otherwise it's hard even if you use a solvent. So this was way easier. Using a plastic trim removal for the final touch-ups, and then cleaning the entire stem, the head unit. I'm using a toothbrush, some degreaser, and just going over the race surfaces. That way everything is clean before we grease and put things back. You're looking from the bottom to the top. That's why the angle looks a little bit weird. Once that's cleaned, I started cleaning the bearings and the crown races. You can see a little bit of cleaning really makes them shine. I'm actually glad that overall they're not in really bad shape. They just needed some deep cleaning and they just came back to life. Here's the top crown race that we are looking at. And did the same thing. Any dried up grease, I'm using a sand block that really removes them and brings back the patina. Okay, and adding some grease before I install the bearings. Install the bearings, putting the fork, the top bearing goes in, then some more grease, the crown race, and then reassembling as in the order we took them out. Okay, installing the final XMM bolts. One thing I did was change the cables as well as the brake levers. With that, I installed the front wheel, and that completes the headset service. Look at that, swinging freely like a kite. Okay, now comes the rear portion, which is servicing the drum brake and the wheel. I did kind of repurpose the chain because I didn't have the right chain at the moment. So this will do until I purchase a new one, but this won't be the final chain that will stay on the bike. The chain actually is in a bad shape. You can see that there is a lot of surface rust as well as pitting. So I just cleaned all that up with the sand block. I had a lot of lubrication. Of course, this was sitting inside the grease container for a while before I even pull it out. So this is after all that. Okay, this is me greasing everything because it's been sitting in the degreaser for quite a bit and then has just been sanded. Okay, this seems usable. With that done, I went back to the servicing the rear wheel and the drum. So remove the bolts, then the cable needs to come out anyway, so that has been cut. I'm removing the cable guides and then removing the rear brake stand, the rear cycle stand. With that, the wheel pops off. Okay, we're still not there, but removing the final pieces with those, then the wheel pops off. Okay, there it is. Okay, it's in an average shape, does need some deep cleaning, but it's a single speed and there is drum brake on the other side. So that's what we're going to service. So we'll start with servicing the drum brake. For that, I removed the bolts that hold the axle in place, and then the axle and the drum brake can slide out as a unit. I noticed that the ball bearing started to pop off because this is using loose bearings. So kind of put it in place so I can, flip it over and then remove it. Of course, I picked up any bearings that I lost, remove this one. You can notice the ball bearings there. These are the hub bearings. And the drum and the drum assembly too need some deep cleaning. I thought about using a fishing magnet to collect those bearings, but it turns out that it was a pain in the rear. You can notice the fishing magnet really getting stuck onto the drum itself and the hub mechanism, so I really had to struggle to pop it off. Now this is the other side, and I'm collecting the bearings from this side of the hub. This one has like a small well behind the free hub gear, so it was interesting. It kind of seemed like there was some magnetic surface there which was holding those bearings in place. So I tried to remove the outer ring from the fixed gear, but turns out this is clockwise to remove, so that's what I was struggling with. But once I figured that out, it was quite easy. With that ring removed, I was able to service the gear bearings as well. You can see these bearings here. I think what I need is an ultrasonic parts cleaner. So there goes a lot of elbow grease, cleaning the gear hub body with the prawls that were already there. The prawls seemed to be in nice condition, so I just decided to leave them in there and just give them a good clean. So this will remove any loose dried up grease once that is done. All of this, as well as the bearings, where they went into the degreasing solution and just soaked in for a few hours. Like I said, an ultrasonic parts cleaner. That should be the next thing I need to buy. Okay. As they soak, I started to clean up those, the bolts. Some of them had dried up grease. I just wanted to make them shine. So this is one of the bolts holding the hub axle. I just cleaned that side up. Once that's done, I'm trying to remove the axle from the drum brake mechanism. They kind of seem to seized up, so I had to use the vise and then a really big wrench to remove that. Once that's out, that's the spindle that is out. And I'm now servicing the entire brake shoe mechanism. So this is a drum brake. So it has like a shoe that squeezes the drum, and this is the brake shoe that we are seeing, and then the outer housing. So at this point, it's a matter of slowly removing each and every component, kind of examining them, cleaning them thoroughly, and then putting back. Now I understand you don't want grease anywhere near the braking surfaces, so I'm being very careful. It's just these spring mechanisms and contact points that have ever so slightly greased, and I wiped off any excess. With that one in place, I installed the fixed gear as well. I forgot to show how I clean and service the ball bearings of the gear itself, or the single speed gear itself, so apologize for that. Here is the drum that's being cleaned up. Even this one has a lot of loose rust. That's what we are sanding, or I'm sanding at this moment. Once that is done, I just put the grease around, so that'll hold the bearings in place. And then here you can see me use those bearings that we just took out and just put them around. And then once you have the spindle in, the spindle will hold the bearings from falling off. Now as I put this, I realized on the other side I cannot put the bearings if the spindle is popping out, so I had to gently remove that one. And in fact, if I have to redo, I will put this side first, because this side of the hub had like a little bit of a small well, should I say, like a concave well in it, wherein, and it also seemed to be magnetized. The bearings actually go in there and gets kind of stuck maybe, but they basically go in and sit in very well. This is me reassembling the spindle. Once that's done, the brake shoe goes in. You don't need to over tighten here. Now you noticed I didn't over tighten because we do want the shoe housing to be loose. That way it's not rubbing against the shoe itself. Moreover, there are two outer bolts that will come now that will actually compress the frame against the hub. So there is no point starting to over tighten every nut and bolt. Okay, once this is done, I'm just realigning the entire housing and installing those cable guide nuts and bolts. With that done, here is me replacing the original levers. They are really nice, but one of the lever has a missing clamp. So I'm using the Shimano Delorian, and those did the job pretty well. Okay. And here's me routing the rear cable. These are, of course, brand new cables. I've also noticed that the rear wheel wasn't holding air, so I removed it, and fair enough, the inner tube had a puncture. I used one of those pre-glued patches, and that kind of did the trick, because quite honestly, I didn't have a 26-inch tube, so I was a little worried, but that seemed to have done the trick very well. That's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe.